Hello, my name is Steve Crown, and I'm going to talk about naval warship designs. This is in light of USA President Donald J. Trump's Golden Fleet concept. In the 1980s, as a high schooler, I studied real-life military technology and military history, and I was also a hardcore RPGer out in the 1980s as a high schooler. I eventually acquired a game system called IRONCLADS and FLYERS, which is a tabletop miniatures wargame system. It's a Space 1889 RPG universe, which is a Victorian age steampunk outer space genre game system. This is also in relation to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts and Rule of the Waves. I am not very familiar with Rule of the Waves, other than it's a text-based game system. I think it predates Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. But it does the same thing that Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts does, except for Rule of the Waves 3 deals with aircraft carriers. Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts does not deal with aircraft in any form. So you don't have land-based aircraft. You don't have aircraft carriers. So in that respect, Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, in terms of World War I, World War II naval warfare, aircraft is not part of the combat system. So, IRONCLADS and FLYERS, Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, and Rule of the Waves. They deal with port defense, coastal defense, international oceanic warfare, naval warfare. So, during the 1980s, while I was doing my military studies, I came up with my own theories concerning naval warfare tactics and naval warship designs. And IRONCLADS FLYERS does allow me to do the Victorian age, 1860s, 1850s, actually, 1850s through 1889. In 1890, Harvey Steele came out, which changed naval warship designs completely. And so the warship designs of the space station of Ironclads. It is not compatible with Harvey Steel warship designs. So as an RPGer in 1984. I became a hardcore RPG in 1984. I acquired Dungeons and Dragons Red Book rules in 1980. In 1982, I started playing with the game system. In 1983, I was introduced to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Gary Gygax's first edition. In 1984, I became a hardcore RPGer. I created the Clone War campaign and the Ancient Earth campaign. The Clone War campaign is basically a Dungeons and Dragons Red Book rules version of the AD&D campaign, which is the Ancient Earth campaign. The Ancient Earth campaign is the AD&D campaign version of the Clone War campaign of the D&D Red Book rules campaign setting. Game mechanics are similar, but they're different, and so how the game worlds would be are parallel. The two campaigns are basically parallel universes. And so in 1985, I acquired Traveler, science fiction adventure in the far future, copyright 1980, and Star Frontiers. I got the second edition. And then my brother bought Nighthawk's version of the Nighthawk rules for Star Frontiers. I bought Azante High Lightning, which I think had the High Guard rules book, which modified the ship design rules or Traveler system. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I started thinking about, outer space, interplanetary star systems, societies and stuff. And, well, I was 3 years old when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. And so, because of that, because of the Apollo 11 mission, I became a hardcore believer in peaceful human presence in outer space and on other celestial bodies. I remember the Apollo 1 fire, but I was too young to understand what that was all about. But because of the Apollo 1 fire, I have always been interested in manned spacecraft designs. And because of Apollo 11, I became an outer space science fiction genre fan. So I was watching movies, TV shows on outer space science fiction. So I saw Star Trek, the original series, Lost in Space, the original series, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Buck Rogers in 25th Century, Battlestar Galactica, Star Blazers, TOS, Star Wars Episode 4, Silent Running, Robotech, TOS, Doctor Who and Doctor Who, but Doctor Who is not as much out of space as Star Trek was. For me, Doctor Who was about time travel, and so the first 4 Doctors are the Bible on time travel, as far as I am concerned. But when I created the Fall Chart Project back in 1985 and 1986, Star Trek TOS was the gold standard in outer space issues. There are some things that Star Trek TOS did not have answers to, like Godzilla, unless you want to talk about the planet killer or the space amoeba. But they did not. Star Trek did not have an answer to the Daleks. They did not have an answer to the Cybermen. So and most outer space science fiction prior to Star Trek, the TOS, outer space science fiction was a subgenre of horror. Outer space science fiction is subgenre of science fiction, and science fiction was a subgenre of horror. And Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek TOS ripped that apart. Doctor Who embraced science fiction and outer space science fiction as a horror genre, subgenre to horror. So for me, growing up, I got disenfranchised with, I grew up watching documentaries about that first space race era. I've seen video clips of Wernher von Braun when he was working on the V2 rockets, Robert Goddard when he was doing his thing, and there's another guy that did rockets, another American guy. And I grew up, watching all of that. In the 1970s, they were doing rocket cars and rocket motorcycles, trying to break the sound barrier with the ground vehicles. Evel Knievel was active at that time, and he hired a NASA guy. I don't know who he hired to help him design a motorcycle that can jump across the Grand Canyon. And delays and cost overruns was thing, and then he failed to jump, and he was ticked off. I was ticked off, along with Evel Knievel. So, but yeah, so I grew up thinking, interested in real-life spacecraft designs, and watching the Apollo programs and Skylab. And so when the space shuttle program came out, the USA Republicans screwed that program over. And then, Ronald Reagan's Space Station Freedom debacle. So, SDI. And Ronald Reagan was also trying to do a naval build-up, naval fleet build-up. He wanted to have 600 ships, couldn't get there. So, and then since Ronald Reagan, the U.S. Navy had up its ass concerning what it wanted for naval warships and policing the world. So this is all tied into that. So so Kenealand is a fictional nation. It's an RPG nation for my History of Clone War campaign. The History of Clone War campaign is a mega genre RPG campaign system. It's not a meta genre, because a meta genre is one game system that does multiple genres. The History of Clone War is a mega genre because it uses single genre RPG systems for representing different eras, science, technology, religion, magic eras within a campaign world setting. Or that's the original concept. But it can also represent different planetary societies being of different technological ages, and science, religion, science and magic, religion and magic, and science and technology ages. And so you can have, for example, you can have a one world would be a Star Frontiers world, a Star Frontiers Traveler, outer space exploration and technology. And another world would be a D&D or a D&D technology area. And then another game world would be a Battletech universe technology. And so, but in general, what I looked at is each genre, single genre game system, represents a evolution of science and technology, from the creation of the universe to the destruction of the universe. The destruction of the universe being represented by Warhammer 40,000. So you have so in Space 1889 is in the Victorian age of science and technology within the history of the Clone War campaign setting. And then you have the comic book superhero journal like Hero System, Marvel Superhero, DC Role-Playing Game, DC Heroes Role-Playing Game. DC there's a more newer version out. I don't know what it's called. That represents present day time, basically. So the So there are several things to take into consideration when creating a naval fleet, a national naval fleet. One of the things you want to take into consideration is port defense. Port and harbor defense. Within Ironclads and in the Flyers, there is a difference between ports and harbors. Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, World Warships, Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts has a campaign, world campaign. So Rule of the Waves has a world campaign setting. Ironclads and the Flyers does have a world campaign setting. So you have international relations. They UAD, Rule of the Waves. They primarily use the term ports or harbors. I'm not sure what Rule of the Waves uses. I haven't watched many videos on that. I watch all kinds of videos on Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Still, basically 90% of what I know of Ultimate Dreadnoughts comes from YouTuber Stealth 17 Gaming. His UAD videos. So a lot of this comes from that. But in the 1980s, I was focused on, as far as fleet design, naval fleets, I was focused on frigates, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, aircraft carriers, submarines. When I started watching UAD videos and the campaign came out, I started thinking about coastal defense stuff. Now, I did think about coastal defense when I got this, actually, but there are certain warship design concepts that I was interested in that's come real life designs from the 1850s to the 1880s. But with the campaign, with the Ultimate campaign, that, watching the campaigns, I really got into the various different warships, the naval vessels that'll be needed for port defense and stuff. Port defense, coastal defense, and the high seas fleet. And so it UAD got me to seriously think about such things. Whereas prior to that, yes, I did some thoughts, but I didn't really go that deep. So for example, so port defense. You have civilian port defense, which is civilian police and Coast Guard. You have civilian police and rescue. And then you have, and they're probably involved with merchant tariffs, merchant trading, contraband, stuff like that. They're not responsible for mining, setting up defensive mines and ports, defending against naval invasions. Okay. So my UAD vessels would be PSRs, and these would also be your hospital ships too. So you have, and then you have the military defense. And the military vessels don't really deal with the civilian stuff, like trading, mercantile contraband and stuff like that. They pretty much are looking for spies. They're looking for, well, maybe not so much spies, but special teams getting on land or whatever. They're looking for enemy naval vessels coming into port, military vessels coming to do damage, or that's their primary purpose. So you're going to have lots of different vessels for port defense. I have several different naval concepts for port defense. Then you have coastal defense. Again, you have civilian police and rescue. The military will also engage in rescue operations and port defense and coastal defense. and you have the military defense. Now, the primary difference between coastal port defense and coastal defense is the port defense stays within the port region. They go out and, they may exit the port, chase down or intercept vessels that are coming into the port. But they don't travel the coast, they don't patrol the coastlines between ports. They stay in the port region. They're focused on ports. Coastal defenses, they travel between ports. They're looking for people that need rescuing, or looking for illegal immigrants trying to get in between ports on coastlines and stuff. And then military defense, you can make sure that nobody is coming in. The military is used trying to get in to land between the ports. And the port defense and coastal defense would refer to within the Ultimate Elder campaign and Rule the Waves campaign. It doesn't matter if it's a homeland homelands like the United States mainland, or like for Great Britain, the homeland port defense on Britain's homeland, and port defense against holdings across the world, in Africa and in Asia. Same thing with coastal defense would be between, if you have an island chain, several different islands in Indonesia, your coastal defense would be patrolling those islands, an island group, for example. Then you have your oceanic fleet. For the most part, the oceanic fleet will be mercantile. Spelled that wrong. And then you have military defense. And then you have military offensive power fleet. Um, the we're going to go with for offense, we're going to go as High Seas Fleet. And then we're going to have a Coastal Invasion Fleet. And maybe a blockade fleet. With that, okay, with that. So within the alternative dreadnoughts, the Coastal Invasion Fleet would be a naval blockade fleet. As well as a land-based shoreline the land campaign shoreline fleet. Within alternative world dreadnoughts, you have land-based campaigns that you are not in control of. But, you know, if you have warships in the area supporting the land-based campaign, you have a better chance of succeeding in that campaign. And so you're going to have warships designed for that. You want to and so yeah, Coastal Invasion would be yeah, okay, we're going to naval blockade would be another classification. We're going to separate it out. coastal invasion. The main difference between a blockade fleet and an invasion fleet is with a blockade, you're not trying to get on land and conquering the territory. You're just there preventing ships from entering or leaving the port. In a land campaign is the land campaign shoreline fleet is similar to a coastal invasion fleet, but the main difference is with the coastal invasion, you are trying to capture a port. With a land campaign shoreline fleet, your ships are, you're not really fighting ships in a port. You are basically doing shore bombardments. Basically doing shore bombardments and maybe harassing transport ships, enemy transport ships, on the foreign soil. Basically, what MacArthur's army was doing during World War II. His people were in Burmese or whatever, and they were responsible for harassing Japanese units throughout the war until he was able to return with U.S. land forces, Marines, and resupply them and reinforce them. What was it? The Tokyo Express was a oil supply chain that Japan had during World War II. Japan does not have oil in its landmass, so in order to prevent the European nations from gaining influence in Asia, Japan needed to acquire oil that is located across the Asian Pacific. And a lot of that territory was under European influence, and so Japan had to invade that area to get the oil to get into to supply its military efforts. And that didn't go well for Japan. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Okay, so those are the types of fleets that enable a nation would look at having in terms of naval warfare. So, which comes down to what kind of ship types are there? And we are at 46 minutes. Wow. So, let's see here. Yes. Okay, you want some food, huh? Tezzy does not like eating by herself. She wants me petting her or being her next to her while she eats. So, in the Navy, Naval Force types. Okay, so okay, I'll be done in a few minutes. It shouldn't take long. Ironclads need the flyers. Canadian Navy. Now, within the Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought's game system, Naval Warship Types. Within the, okay, Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Okay, yeah, within the Ultimate Dreadnoughts game system, you have nations that you can take control of. And they're traditional World War I, World II nations, depending on the time era. Within Rule of the Waves, you had some additional fictional nations or theoretical nations that you can play with. But Canadian as a nation, it for me is more about this is what I want for my warship designs. This is what I want for naval, military technology war machines, infantry units, aerospace units, land, air, sea, outer space units, weapons and vehicles. I'm not too keen on replicating real-life military units. I'm not too keen on representing game system military units. For example, Warhammer 40K, the Steel Legion, within, I can't think of the Marines, there's the Space Marine chapters, Space Marine chapters, Sister Battle chapters, Endar chapters, Orc chapters. Okay, I'm not interested in representing mech units within the Battletech universe. Okay, I'm not interested, replicating that. This is what I want to do. This is the technology I want to use. This is the tactical strategies I want to use, and stuff like that. With game systems like Ultimate Dreadnoughts and Rule of the Waves, I am more into mixing and matching national technologies into one's warship design than I am saying, oh, I want to play as the United States and use United States warships, whatever. Which is what Navy Field does, which is what World of Warship does. You get your fleet, and then you can't mix and match your fleets. You can't mix and match national technologies onto a single warship, which is where I'm at in naval warship design, which is where I'm at. I was one, if I had my own fleet, this is what fleet competition do I want to have, which is, Navy Field does not do that, and World of Warships does not allow me to do that. So, Ultimate Dreadnoughts does that, and Rule of the Waves does that. You can do that with IRONCLADS and FLYERS also. So, so that's where I'm at. So, warship types, general classifications. We're just going to go with general classifications because it tells you what's okay. You have cutters and sloops. These are mostly age of sail warship designs or commercial ship design. I don't know I don't know what a cutter is. I don't know what features identifies a naval vessel as a cutter. I don't know what naval features naval vessel features identified as a sloop. I believe that sloops are faster than cutters. I believe that cutters may be coastal vessels. but I think cutters can also be ocean-going vessels. There may be size differences, tonnage. Then you have frigates. Now, depending on which nation you're in, the smaller ship would be, when it comes to frigates and destroyers, some nations, frigates are smaller than destroyers. In other nations, destroyers are smaller than frigates. So when you're looking at the overall, all the nations, frigates and destroyers, there's going to be confusion as, oh, why is this a frigate? And how come this is called a frigate and not a destroyer? How come this is called a destroyer and not a frigate? As an American, frigates are smaller than destroyers. Actually, yeah. Frigates could be actually ocean-going cutters, or cutters and sloops may be civilian vessels, and frigates is a military vessel. I don't know. Okay, I don't know how that goes. Then you have cruisers. Then you have battle cruisers. Then you have battleships. Then you have aircraft carriers. Then you have submarines. Now, within each of these classes, you have subclasses. The main difference between a cruiser and a battle cruiser, battleships and cruisers, battleships, and battle cruisers is a battle cruiser is basically a blending of a cruiser and a battleship. Within the submarines, within the Washington Treaty of 1922, and within the 1930 London Treaty, battle cruisers was not a thing. In fact, because of the World War I Battle of Jutland, battle cruisers became a pariah. Which is one of the reasons why HMS Hood was originally conceived as a battleship, but then was reclassified was originally conceived as a battle cruiser, but was reclassified as a battleship. Because its hull, the cruisers in Washington Treaty maxed out at 15,000 tons. The battleships started at 25,000 tons. And then the smaller destroyers were like at 2,000 tons. So yeah, cruisers were like between 5,000 and 15,000 tons. And then the 1930s London Treaty, they changed things around a bit on the numbers. But you had subcategories of cruisers. And the subcategories of cruisers was based on tonnage, armor, speed, and weapon systems. So we're not going to go into this detail, that level of detail on this video session. We'll get into that next time.